stories, they tell us who we are. About me, my friends, my family, those we love and love no more. Live our lives as stories, not always knowing why, but the world keeps turning round again. Lives and stories just go by.
Hello everyone, I'm Robin Ewing and I'm just here to introduce two very inspiring women, Jane and Mary from Big Sky Stories. Over to you, Jane and Mary, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin, and thank you everybody for inviting us to participate in the symposium this year. We're very excited to sit with such wonderful company and to share some stories from our little pocket of the world out here in the far west. Well, my name is Jane Vaughan and this is Mary Pilkington, and we are two of the co-directors of Big Sky Stories. And our topic today is starting early, starting conversations. We all like a good story, and the beginning is often the most important part. And for us today, we're going to have an early language and literacy development focus. First of all, though, Big Sky Stories would like to acknowledge the Wilyakali people as the traditional custodians of the land on which we are based, and to the Barkindji Nation in which we work and travel. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, particularly to the young people of our community, which we hope to see thrive in the future. So a little bit about Broken Hill and the far west. You may have been out here before, but you may not. It's a really big part of the state of New South Wales in Australia, as you can see here on the map. And the reach of Big Sky Stories is hopefully to even extend a little bit further into Western New South Wales as well. But essentially we have more than 19,000 people, which is not very many people given the size of the geographic space, but the LGAs of Broken Hill, the Central Darling Shire and an unincorporated area are what we call the far west of New South Wales. Over 147,000 square kilometres, more than 17 schools, a number of preschools, playgroups. We have a really strong mining history, which I'm sure many people would be aware of. The back of the Australian economy sits on Broken Hill. We have a lot of families who live on stations, really far out. It's nothing for them to drive for 4 hours to come in and get groceries every couple of weeks. And that's a really normal part of life out here. Also, tourism is a really important part of our economy out here. A lot of people come to travel through Broken Hill on the way to somewhere else, or they come specifically to the far west because it's a really beautiful part of the state. We have a really big arts history as well. ProHeart, the Brushman of the Bush, a really strong arts culture, a number of art galleries, and people come here specifically because of the big sky and that big blue, beautiful light that we have out here.
And the stories with the
stories. That's right. That's right. So it's also the first heritage city in Australia, which is really exciting, and we're really, really proud of that. People are putting in a lot of effort to make sure that people know about Broken Hill, and they have really great plans to see it thrive in the future, Broken Hill and the surrounding areas. But also, there's a little bit more to tell you about Broken Hill and the Far West. And Broken Hill and the Far West has been an opportunity for Mary and myself to come and to teach. I'm a primary school teacher. Mary has experience in early childhood as well. And Nikki, our other founder, has a background in social work. And so for me, working in this environment gave me a really, really quick opportunity to see the disadvantage that happens early on, being in a place like this with the limitations and sometimes the restrictions that we have, and the impact that that has on early language and literacy development. What about you, Mary?
Definitely. So I came from Sydney,
yep,
teaching as a kindergarten teacher, and moved out here as a preschool teacher, so in the early years. And I definitely saw the differences of the needs of the children and the families out here. And in my role as an early childhood educator and a primary school teacher, and now as a learning support teacher in a local primary school, I have seen the need for the early intervention, early years, and literacy is a huge component in our community. And you can see the the generations of that. As the children now go through a cognitive assessment, the families are then finding out that they also have challenges in their cognitive abilities. So we are now supporting a holistic family through the early years.
It's really big. So because of where we are, geographic isolation has a really big part to play in the access that we have to learning experiences and resources, also expertise, but it could also just be simple resources like quality materials, like books. We also are in the lowest 10% economically in the state, which is pretty striking. We have a lot of people who have definitely made money from mining, but we have a lot of people who essentially live in poverty as well, which is a really stark contrast to live with every day. We have statistically a large portion, 34% of adults who have finished school at year 9 or year 10. So their literacy development is somewhat limited as well. And I think the most important statistic is that 31.1% of our children at 5 years at this point are at risk or vulnerable in their language and cognition, which is in comparison to 15%, which is the New South Wales state average. And that's more than twice. And that's a lot. And we just don't think that that is okay, or it should be the case. That's a really, really big difference. We know that 0 to 5 is so important foundationally for language and learning development. So for us, it was imperative that we do something to tell a better story for the families of children and families in the Far West.
I've got a few quotes I'd like to share with you. So one is, one of the greatest gifts that we can give our children is that of our story, by which their imaginations will be nourished and the world will become a place of wonder. Children fall in love with books because of the memories created when they snuggle up and read with someone they love. And finally, children need the freedom and time to play. Play is not a luxury. Play is a necessity.
Thanks, Mary. I think all of those quotes sum up, I think, something that resonates for all of us to be a part of this symposium today and over the coming months, is that we recognise the power of story. We recognise that it involves relationship. We recognise that it involves playfulness and creativity. And all of these things are foundational, and they shouldn't be out of reach, and they shouldn't be something that isn't accessible to all children. So because of all of these factors, Big Sky Stories began in 2022. We haven't hit 12 months yet. We officially opened the doors on July 26th last year. We're founded by myself, Jane Vaughan, and Nikki Wright. Also, we have another co-director in Robin Ewing, and Mary Pilkington joined as a co-director just recently. So Big Sky Stories has a vision, and our vision is a world where children can share books, stories, songs, and rhymes every day from birth with the important people in their lives to make a positive impact on their future and the community. So that sounds really wonderful and really lovely, but we actually think that this is possible. We think that if we can encourage our community, the Far West community, to really be talking about this and understand the importance of early language and literacy, to understand what it looks like and how it works. We think that if we can enable families, parents and carers to be aware of what they can do and how that works, to enable them to be the first teachers of language and literacy in their homes, that will make a difference. And we want to equip families with resources and support to be able to do that. So that might look like quality books, it might look like support, it might look like modelling, it might look like redirecting them to a support service that they need. But we think that we can do something about this. So the first big project that Big Sky Stories got to be a part of in this early childhood arena was an opportunity for a grant that we were successful in with the Department of Education, and it was for a playgroup partnership. It was to be in partnership with community groups and to focus on that transition. It was directly related to that AEDC data that says 31% of our children are at risk or vulnerable. So we partnered up with Mission Australia, with Catholic Care, and a local public school who run a playgroup on site each week. And the goal was to create a resource kit, an outreach kit that we could take to various playgroups, and we could use that opportunity to do modelling, to teach specifically, and to equip families and children. So what was happening? This is what it looked like in one of the playgroups that I first attended. This is kind of the state of the books. A lot of books that had been donated, and I love a good secondhand book, but a lot of these books were not quality literature, were not books that were appealing. A lot of things were said like, nobody ever reads, I hate running the story time. Leaders commenting that families never sat and read or never accessed the books that were there, even if they put them out. Some of the groups have a focused story time, and some of them, they just put the books out in the corner. And there was definitely, for the leaders of the groups, no training and no sense of confidence that they had in encouraging people with that early language and literacy. So there was definitely a need and definitely an opportunity for Big Sky Stories to partner with them and support them in developing this. So what did we do? Essentially, this is what I got to do a lot over 6 months, which was very fantastic, and I loved every second of it. I did a lot of sitting on the floor, a lot of engaging with young children from 0 to 5 years. We did a lot of storytelling, a lot of story reading, a lot of oral storytelling. The kits that we had essentially included quality literature and puppets, finger puppets and hand puppets. And we had a mat and we had some cushions and some baskets. And that's all we needed, because early language and literacy shouldn't be too complicated. So you can see here we're reading, this little person has a puppet, and we just had a lot of engagement. It didn't take too long once they knew who I was and they were comfortable for them to start really being connected to stories. So the goal was to really make sure that we spent a lot of time using eye contact, talking aloud, talking about what I was seeing in the books, making sure that I was sitting on the floor, as I said, to really make sure that children knew I was there for them. It wasn't just an adult leading something, but that I was with them and I was playing with them. There were a lot of themes and interests that came out. Dinosaurs were really popular. Digger books were really popular, and of course animals, and they make such fabulous noises. We made sure that we had books that were culturally representative of a wider range. We had books in different languages as well, so that parents could potentially join in and feel included in the access. We also had books that had flaps and surprises that lifted up, and we had books that made connections to our part of the world as well. Lots of Australian animals and environmental kind of scenery that they would connect with and enjoy as well. So we made sure that the activities were really child-led. We tried to be really responsive to them wanting to pick up a different book or put down that book or start telling a story instead of reading the one that we were reading, doing a lot of mirroring and echoing what they were saying or what they were trying to say, as they were developing their expressive language. We tried to do a lot of vocabulary building, just like really reinforcing animal names, sounds, colors, objects, things that we could see in the books. We used a lot of black and white books as well. I'm sure that many people know that up until 6 months, newborn babies can't really see anything else other than high contrast black and white. So we made sure that that was a part of the material as well. And also just simple things like page turning, asking the children to turn the pages, asking them to be a part of the process. This is an example of one session that we did where I got to lead a formal storytime session each week. So we're going on a bear hunt and I went walking to classic books. Some of the children knew these books and some of them had never seen them before. We did simple things that were really whole body immersive. So trying to learn in our bodies by using everyday objects and materials to reenact the book. We've got our sheet there for the river and the newspaper for the swishy grass. We found our bear at the end, which was found with great excitement. A lot of moving around the space, call and response. We know that repetition and rhyme help language to develop. So lots of actions and everyday items that families could potentially use at home to recreate the same story for themselves. With I Went Walking, we used the plastic animals. We put them into a bag. We pulled them out. We had to guess by describing them what they were and which animal would be next. And then the children had a turn as well, which was really fun. We also got to do this beautiful book, Garden Stew. And Garden Stew is wonderful. You can imagine all of the kinds of fun things that end up in a garden stew. And we had gathered all of those materials and we were outside for this activity this day. And we read the story. And as we read, we built our own garden stews as well. So this was really excellent because this had been part of the group where the leaders really wanted us to encourage parents and carers to understand and be more involved with the storytelling with their children. So we wanted it. We wanted to make sure that they understood the intention of what they were doing. So with these sessions, I would always stop before we started and say, everybody, this is what we're going to do today. This is what it's going to look like. This is why we're doing it. And this is why this is really important for language development. For instance, it might be that this book has rhyming in it, and rhyming helps us make those sound connections so that when we're reading, we're able to predict better what might be coming along. So then once they understood what was happening, the parents and carers often felt more comfortable to come down onto the mat and sit rather than sending their children across to just go and be entertained or to participate in that way. So we made our garden stew. We didn't eat the garden stew, but we made the garden stew, and a couple of the mums and the dads pretended to eat the garden stew. But it was a really wonderful time to be really immersive and to be in the story. And we sang songs about different foods that we like to eat. And we would often use other books like Press Here, where we could get up and play a game, connected it to colour, moved around the space, interacted with the parents and the carers in as many ways as we could based on a quality book. Beautiful. So a couple of fun things here that were very much a feature of this program. So the black and white cards we used to encourage the very small babies who were there doing tummy time perhaps on the mat. The finger puppets, of course, and some of them were used in sets for storytelling, like the gingerbread man, but also we used a lot of finger puppets to just make up our own stories. Oftentimes the stories, the children would start naturally looking through the puppets to find the animals that matched the story that we were reading, like Wombat Stew. It was someone would always say, I'm going to think of and it was great to kind of gather them all up. And then suddenly we were making the story as we were telling the story. So the Noisy Book, I don't know if you know this book, but it's a great simple book, but it really encourages them in their expressive language, and it's just everyday objects and items that make sound and gets them talking. Here's a bit of a collection of the favourites that we read again and again and again. A lot of flaps, a lot of movement, and a lot of interaction. And Press Here, another great book that kind of breaks the fourth wall of the story, which I think is really a great way to engage young children in books. And the little tip cards that we have here were available if parents wanted to take them home, just with really simple ideas that they could use to encourage and continue their learning at home. For instance, turning the page. One parent said, we left and we got stuck with COVID at home for 2 weeks, and she said, and I kept doing the thing you said about asking to turn the page, and now if I go to turn the page, I get in trouble for turning the page, and he wants to turn the page. And that was fantastic. So those things that seemed really simple, once people took a hold of them, they really started to make a difference. And those are all parts of building that early language and that reader identity that we want for young children. So we had a lot of requests, a lot of little people saying, please, can we read this book? Or I love this book, can we read that one again? So it was wonderful to see that choice developing and see their ownership in going, you know, I want story to be a part of my day, and this is the kind of things that I like, and this is what I don't like. So yeah, it was a fantastic opportunity. So the impact, I think the impact was pretty immediate. We had a lot more young carers coming down with their children to Big Sky Stories. This is our space here. You can see that it's big and open, and it's really easy for prams to get around. It's designed and set up for little people and families to feel really welcoming, and that they're allowed to touch things, they're allowed to get things off the shelves. We want them to feel like it's a space that they belong. It's not a space that they just pop in and get something and leave again, but it's a space that they can be in, that they can tell stories, that they can sit together and they can enjoy story together. We have an area up the back which we use for workshops, but is also set up for families to come at any time and to just interact with books and simple activities that you can see there in the picture. And we had more and more of those playgroup people coming down and participating in the space, which was excellent. We also developed some material for families to take home, brochures to help them understand more and more of the intricacies of what it looks like to read and to involve young children in story. We have our books set up in our bookshop one more page book emporium so that they're frontward facing, so that they're engaging, so that little children can walk over and say, this is the one that I want. We have books that help parents understand when reading is tricky, parents who wanted to understand more about the background of how reading works with young children. And we have small things that just try to engage children in talk and language and play. It doesn't all have to look like reading, but oral storytelling and creating fun stories as a family when they're down in the space. So one of the great stories I think that has come out of this is that one of the groups that never had anybody reading, all of a sudden when I wasn't there, the little people were coming in and starting their own sessions. They were looking for me and I wasn't there, and they would sit down and then start holding the books up to each other. And I think that that's a wonderful thing when 3 and 4-year-olds are leading each other in story. That's fantastic. One of the groups asked us to put together a kit for them so that they now have quality books there every single week, and parents are really engaging with them. The leader of that group said they now have parents who sit there more than they spend time in the other parts of the room with the other activities, which is great. The groups increased in number. Each of the groups had more people coming to them by the time we finished, which was excellent. And they were transferring those skills at home. One little boy was creating stories that we would tell at playgroup. He was recreating them with his toys at home, which was a wonderful thing to know. The book ownership is developing. More people are coming in and buying books and taking them home, or saying, we love this book at playgroup, can we come and get a copy because we want to keep reading it again. And maybe, Mary, can you tell us about the Pay It Forward scheme?
Yeah, so Pay It Forward is an opportunity for people to come into Big Sky Stories and purchase a book that they may have a positive experience within their life, or their child has chosen to then be able to pay it forward to someone in the community who is vulnerable, that may not have access to those books in the community and in their homes due to that socioeconomic status, or the less confidence in literacy. But this then enables the families to have access to more books. And families are coming into Big Sky Stories, and their children are then saying, oh, for my birthday, I want to pay it forward to other children in the community. So that's something that's then bringing more into the community, to have literacy as a huge part for our children.
That's right. I think that idea of encouraging the community, putting it on the table, you can see that when families and children are like, we need to do this for everybody. This needs to be a part of our community culture. So,
and I have to tell you, Jane, there is a barbershop next door to Big Sky Stories, and there are many children who go and get their hair cut, and then they go to Big Sky Stories to buy a book and pay it forward they go each time.
It becomes a tradition. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. We love it every time. We've had carers come in and ask about help and assistance with their literacy as well, and what we can do, because if you are not confident, it's really hard to feel like you can read with your child. So we want to help them as best we can, but also help them to see there are so many ways that we can read. We can use wordless books, we can talk about the pictures and things we can see, we can make up our own story. It doesn't have to just be the words on the page. So we have more confident leaders now in some of those groups that we've been working with. And I think hopefully they feel like it doesn't have to be a giant song and a dance, but that there are some simple things that they can do to encourage reading in their groups. We've also had groups like the Tresillian carers from the hospital who have started coming down to use our space to encourage mothers to connect with that space, and also other mothers bringing their mothers groups and friends along and saying, we want to meet in this space, we want to use this space, this is where we want to gather together. And again, more and more of that story is happening. We've also,
and then also, Jane, is we have schools that are focusing on attendance within the schools to promote literacy and to promote coming to school. So now, as an incentive, there is a weekly raffle for children's attendance, and the voucher is for Big Sky Stories.
Right.
To promote that literacy.
That's right.
further.
And more books in the
Yes.
community. That's what we want. Books in homes. When you've got more books, it changes your outcomes. We know this from the research. So the more we can do that, the more books we can get out there, the better. So we've also had a chance to be out in the community at different community events. And I think the playgroup work has been a wonderful chance to connect with more families and children who just recognize us now and want to be connected and just want to sit down and read a story, even if there are really fun things happening in the park. So to finish off, reading can be a road to freedom or a key to a secret garden, which, if tended, will transform life. Okay, so thank you so much, everybody, for wanting to know more about Big Sky Stories and a little piece of what we've been doing. There's been a lot more, and if you'd like to follow the story, you can go to www.bigskystories.org.au. You can follow us at Big Sky Stories on Facebook and Instagram, and we'd love to hear from you if you have any ideas about how we can impact the Far West so that we can improve the outcomes for all of the young people out here. We'd love to be in touch and hear from you. Thank you so much, Robin.
I'm sure you'll all agree that Big Sky Stories is a wonderful initiative for the children and young people and families of Far West New South Wales. Thank you so much. This has been the second event in our symposium. We all love a good story, and we'll look forward to sharing more with you as time goes on. Thank you, everyone, and best wishes.
All our lives are stories. They tell us who we are. But me, my friends, my family, those we love and love no more. Live our lives as stories, not always knowing